Oh, nice, 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 nice.
I gotta tweet it. Perfect.
Did your flash go off?
It kind of went. It's kind of hard to see, but follow me at Adam Bain. I'm a good follow.
I was about to ask you to tell everybody your Twitter handle. He's at Adam Bain. I'm at Adam Lashinsky. Adam Bain is a little easier, but it's B-A-I-N, L-A-S-H-I-N-S-K-Y. We'd love to see them, I'm sure. So, Adam, I want to start by asking you to give everybody the, let's say, 90-second version of your career, the places you were before Twitter. And the reason I want you to tell them that is that, you know, Twitter was a lot smaller than it is now when you joined, and I want to get there, but first by explaining what the background is that prepares somebody to run sales at a company like Twitter.
Yeah, sure. So I actually didn't even start in the sales part of the business. I started in journalism. I was...
you got smart.
I started actually in the online journalism space. So I was at the LA Times originally and was part of the team that helped the LA Times go digital, and actually ran product and technology teams there. Then ended up at News Corp working for Rupert for about 13 years as a part of the digital team there. We were running a bunch of sports assets, and then all of a sudden we decided to pitch Rupert and the board to go invest about $2 billion, one of the best venture pitches of all time. We pitched for about 2 hours and got $2 billion, and then promptly went out and spent it on acquiring assets like MySpace and IGN and a whole host of others. We did that for a couple years, and then I got approached by the now CEO, Dick Costello, to come over and help monetization. The company was, when I found it, about 150 people total, all consumer product and engineering. They really hadn't built out a business yet. You flash forward now 3.5 years later, the company's about 2,800 people. The business team went from 0 people to about 700 people globally. We've put teams now in about 30 different countries across the world. So we've been busy.
And you have been busy. And remind me, what year was this that you joined Twitter?
I joined in 2010.
So not quite four long years
Almost
ago.
three and a half, 4 years. And actually was living down here in LA. So it's good to be back in LA for a little bit.
And just to make it perfectly clear to people, when you joined the company 3.5 or so years ago, there were what, 0 revenues?
Yeah, so revenue essentially was zero. The main source of revenue now for the company, we've got 2 lines of business that we have up and running. One certainly is the ad business. So if you open up Twitter and you pull your timeline, you'll see tweets, and then every once in a while a promoted tweet from a marketer in the timeline. And then the second business is actually a data business, so all of the information that comes through the platform, we license it out to places like hedge funds and other places to actually make pretty scientific decisions based on the corpus of Twitter public data that's out there.
Do you remember approximately what the valuation of the company was when you joined?
I definitely do.
And what was it?
When I joined the company, the third-party valuation for the business was sub $1 billion, about $300 million.
About $300 million on no revenue. Is there anybody in the room that would like to have a $300 million business with no revenue in it? And what is it worth today?
So
in the public markets?
In the markets, it's close to 30 or so. I haven't looked recently. So
30 or so billion dollars on what's the revenue run rate right now?
So now we went public last quarter. So what the guidance that we gave the street is well over $1 billion in revenue.
Amazing, amazing.
We went from 0 to over $1 billion of revenue in about 3 years or so. The first 6 months I came to the company, I went out on the road to try and see CMOs to figure out what the heck we should build for them. And so I tried to see 140 CMOs in 140 days for the 140 characters of Twitter. I thought it was cute. My wife thought it was a disaster. You know, we learned a lot in those 6 months, but the first 6 months really was about talking to the customer, and then we turned around and spent 3 years building what we've built.
So I'm really intrigued by that. That's something I wanted to understand is, so you're saying that the business products were not only not very far along, they didn't exist when you joined to figure out how you would sell business products that didn't exist.
Yeah, and the history too is I grew pretty frustrated with the ad business that we had built at Fox, and so I actually wanted to leave the ad business completely
Why were you frustrated with the ad business?
I thought that the problem with digital ad marketing is that it doesn't align all of the people around the table. It doesn't align the incentives, that it really was one-sided. And that the second thing is you had no clear view about whether or not it was working. And so I wanted to actually go to a commerce business because that seemed like you could tell really quickly whether or not you were good. And then I started talking to the management team and the board at Twitter, and they were up for doing something completely different. And what we built was something that people hadn't done before, which is traditional desktop-based display advertising businesses are all banners, and that just we knew that wouldn't work on Twitter. So we had to do something that was a lot more native to the platform, but it meant that we had to blow up every preconceived notion about what it meant to create a business in that way. So the way the look and feel of the ads, the way they're measured, the team that goes out and sell it, all that stuff really was against the grain, not the norm of what people had done before us.
What was the most discouraging thing you heard from a marketer on your initial 140
Oh,
visits?
well, the first day, actually, I thought what I needed to do was go out and explain why Twitter. So for the first 30 days when I got to the company, I locked myself in a room and built probably the most amazing presentation telling the story about why Twitter. And it was 3D, it was amazing. We got out on the road then, I got out on the road, and at my first meeting actually was with the CMO of Visa, a guy named Antonio Lucio, a brilliant CMO. He was in San Francisco. I figured I would try it in the home turf first, and then if it worked, I would take it on the road. And so I had scheduled a 2-hour meeting with them, and I start going into the pitch, and in the first 5 minutes or so, as I was going through it, you could tell that it was all about why Twitter, and about the third slide in, he stopped me and said, like, are you going to continue to tell me why Twitter? And I said, yeah, that's the whole point. He said, no, actually, the point is not why. People already understand and grasp the concept about why. What you need to do is show how. And actually, I think it's a good analogy for sales and marketing overall is if you try and go completely focused around the why, then you've failed. If you keep the conversation into the how, then ultimately you've proven the why by focusing on the how. So that's what we did. The team that we built is all about the science of how inside of Twitter.
And what is the how?
Well, it's Twitter ultimately is the indispensable companion for life in the moment. Whether you're watching something on TV and you're experiencing what the world is saying, whether you can't be there, like I wasn't here yesterday, but I was following along for what all of you in the crowd were tweeting about, and I got a pretty good picture of what was happening. Or whether it's an ability to communicate actually directly with marketers as well, whether in a customer service way or in a direct marketing way. So the how of Twitter is unique because it's not just a sales function, it's an insight function, it's a customer service function, it's a integrated marketing function as well.
So it's interesting listening to you talk about the beginning of the business product. You went and had all these conversations. You went on a listening tour, essentially,
That's
the way
right.
a politician might say, what do the voters want? These were your voters, your customers. But you came up with precisely two things, right? The promoted tweets and
promoted tweets, promoted
and
trends,
analytics.
accounts. Yeah. We're certainly just getting started. In fact, back in September or so, YPO member Nathan Hubbard actually just joined Twitter from Ticketmaster, where he was the CEO there for many years, to come in and help build out our commerce team. So we've got some great things, obviously, that we're working on. But the two businesses that we've got, even that is pretty complex. So on the advertising side, it's global, and it also rolls through many different channels. There's a team that goes out and sits with CMOs. There's a mid-market team that goes and calls on people telephonically, that's hundreds of people. And then there's a complete self-serve ad business in the same way where Google is a self-serve ad business or a Facebook is a self-serve ad business. So we've got a team of people that handle the orders that come through in that way.
I want to put a pin in the commerce conversation and come back to it. I don't want to forget. If I forget, I'd like somebody to remind me that don't want to leave out commerce. But I'm interested in hearing you talk about how you thought about building this global sales function. Where did you go first? US, I assume, first, then where, and how did you make those decisions?
It's a really good question, because actually we had a tougher problem than most. Most US-based businesses start in the US and they decide to expand globally. Our problem was, when you started looking at the user base, 75% of our audience is outside the US. Only 25% is here in the US. So we actually had a global business from day one. So we had
global usage.
Global usage, yeah. So we moved pretty quickly to put teams in places like Japan, the UK, and Brazil, as much as we did across here in the US. Today, the revenues still are not equal in that way. About 25% of the revenue is from outside of North America, but you'll see that move along the way.
And why exactly is that?
Well, we spent the last year putting teams in market, and
no, I'm sorry. Why are the usage and the revenues flipped?
Yeah, because we spent only the last year putting the rest of the teams in the markets where we desire, and we kind of have a view. There's like we put a divining rod about 10% or so of a market. If the active user base of Twitter was about 10%, then we decided to put a business team in. If we weren't quite at 10%, then we put a market development team in. And those folks would go out and sit with athletes and politicians and actors and musicians and the like to talk to them about the how and a little bit of the why of Twitter for them. So not marketers, if you will, but people that actually contribute content.
As the global head of sales, can you explain the difference from a management perspective between the business product on the one hand and the product on the other hand?
Sure. At a high level, the goal was, in most advertising-based businesses, they're completely different, which is to say that, in fact, when you look at inside of the content space that I came from, you had content on the screen, and then you have a little box that you ask marketers to program in, and they actually look and act and feel completely different.
Like in my business, for example, in the magazine business, you have editorial and you have advertising.
That's right. Now, the funny thing is, when you look at the history of advertising-based monetization, it wasn't always that way. And in fact, think about TV. The monetization of TV is essentially this. You have a 30-minute story, and in between that 30-minute story, you have nano stories being told by a marketer, but the creative canvas is still the same. It's stories. Search came along and actually replicated it. You ask a question of Google, you get back really high-quality results, and then you have some results that are provided by a marketer. And so when we started looking at what we spent the last 18 to 20 years of digital display marketing doing, we had really failed. And so I thought there was an opportunity, and now it's becoming clear that it's a huge opportunity to have the creative canvas, the marketing canvas, sit like TV, intertwined with the content canvas. And that is the power of the platform. It's labeled promoted, but the power of the platform is that as you're going through your stream, we insert or target promoted tweets into your stream, but it's still a tweet. It acts and looks and feels like a tweet. Everything that you can do with the promoted or the ad, you can do with content and vice versa. You can retweet it, you can @reply it, you can do all these forms of engagement.
And it's pretty interesting that I don't want this to say it too strongly, but I think it's accurate. Your content, other than the promoted tweets, are user-generated content, which means it's all free. You don't pay for my tweets. I do.
Yeah, there's a massive set of content production that comes in. What we're doing is actually helping people with distribution. And the problem, whether you're, again, whether you're an athlete who wants to speak directly to audiences, and I'll give you a great example of this. So 2 years ago, during the off season, there's a football player, Matt Forte. He's a running back for the Chicago Bears, and he blew out one of his knees, and he spent the entire off season rehabbing his knee. And he was working out one day, and he looked down at his phone, and there was a story, a tweet actually, from the NFL.com actually, that said his injury was not recovering. He wasn't recovering well from the injury, and that there was a potential that he wasn't going to make it for the season. And he saw that, and instead of calling a press conference or going out and talking to the world in a non-scalable way, he turned around, took the phone, and recorded him running up a hill with a 200-pound weight tied to his chest, and then tweeted out, 200-pound weight tied to my chest, running up a hill, I think my knee's going to be fine. And sure enough, he played that season. So it's an incredible way for distribution, for people to find distribution and communicate directly to the world.
There's this perception, and you probably have data to either back it up or refute it or both, that for as successful as Twitter has been, it's still sort of a niche phenomenon that some people do fervently, but most people still have no idea what it is. So first of all, is it an accurate assertion?
One of the things that we did as a management team over the last couple of years is really go through and set core values that the company would stand for. And it's one of the things that helped us scale. And one of those core values is reach every person on the planet. And so we will not rest until every single person on the planet can use the platform and do use the platform.
What percentage of the planet is using it today?
A lot less than every person on the planet. So we certainly have some work to do in that regard. And there's certainly a gap between people understanding or hearing about the product. You turn on TV and you certainly see this for the most part, but then actually actively using the product on an everyday basis. So we've got a lot of work to do, which we're excited to do there.
I have a strange request to make of you.
Go ahead.
Will you change seats with me?
Do it.
I'm going to go this way. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you know why I changed seats with you? I couldn't see the clock from where I was sitting. That's why I changed seats. Okay. It's a great goal. It sounds a lot like Microsoft's slogan from many years ago. I think it was a computer on every desk. Is that right?
I don't know. Maybe.
So you didn't study Microsoft?
No, I think actually what we looked at were people that were using the platform, and again, the company started actually as a way to text message the world. So the roots of the company actually were in mobile. And mobile is an interesting one because, in fact, the whole 140 characters actually had a foundation in SMS texting. In SMS texting, there's 160 characters as the limit that you can push a text through before it breaks up into multiple text messages on your phone. So the founders wanted to have one tweet fit through. So they took 20 characters for your username and then left over 140 characters. So the concept also was very democratizing. Anybody in the world, it really doesn't matter your race, your economic status, or how high fidelity or low fidelity your phone is. Anybody could create or consume 140 characters worth of text. And so that was the founding principle. And we think that ultimately the content platform becomes so much more powerful when everybody in the world can both see each other and then also communicate with each other in that way.
And I want to ask this in a way that you can sort of give an illuminating answer, which is to say, so I enjoy Twitter very much, as you know. I'm not a power user, but I'm a heavy user, and I get it, right? And maybe I'm not exactly the right demographic, but I really appreciate it as a broadcast mechanism. I know all sorts of people who maybe they know about it, maybe they don't, but they certainly don't care. And what I want to understand is, how do you get to them?
Yeah. So that reaching every person on the planet is also balanced against one other core value, which is just simplify. And one of the things that we know that we need to do with inside the product is just make it that much easier to get in and see the value of the content that's there. In some ways, we also have there's so much content that's there. I mean, there are the world is really there at your fingertips. So our ability to give you recommendations on who you should follow, show you which tweets are happening around you, or even if you haven't been there in a while, and later on we'll come back. Here are the most important things that you may have missed. So in some ways, it's very analogous to TV. There's a lot happening right now with inside of TV, and when you tune out and then tune back in, it would be great if you had a cliff notes of what you missed.
Okay, I don't understand what commerce on Twitter means.
Well, we haven't been public about it yet.
Oh, what a great opportunity in front of this fine.
Yeah, I wish if we weren't a public company. It's actually interesting being a public company now. There's a little bit of there's good news, I guess, and interesting news. The good news is that the company was really prepared for it. The interesting news is that you talk about things that happened because of the way that the conference call goes and the like. Talk about things that happened, now 90 days ago, and the company's in such of this live, in the moment platform that we're thinking about things that are happening now, but you're talking about things that happened, a month or two ago. But here's what I can say. We started looking at the data, and it is very clear. People discover products and services with reckless abandon on the platform, and there is a very large distance between discovering that product or service and actually making a purchase. And so our goal is to shrink the distance between the two.
And as you analyze the marketplace, has Google done a good job of capturing commerce?
Of course. When you have a specific question and know exactly what you want, there is no place like search to go. The question is, there is other moments that you may not know what you want, and discovery is still a largely unsolved problem. You wrote a book recently and distributed the book through a bunch of different channels.
Including Twitter.
Including Twitter. There is a large distance between discovering that book and making the purchase of that book on the platform. But
I promoted it on Twitter.
Correct.
I did not distribute it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we think that, the tools already are beginning to form there. For example, if somebody tweets out, "Has anybody read a good business book recently?" Literally, the next time they pull their timeline, right now in the promoted tweet that could appear is an answer essentially to that question. So it's a discovery platform for both content, and we also think for products and services for commerce.
But what you just described is still an advertising sale, right?
It's true, although we can help people navigate their way through. Also, the great part of Twitter is that it started with 140 characters of text, but now through some technology we call Twitter cards, you can embed media along with the tweet. So the Matt Forte example is he embedded video of himself running up a hill. This picture that I just took and tweeted it out, that picture is going to ride right along with it. We've launched something we called lead gen cards for marketers. So if you have a business and you want to generate a lead, you can tweet out some marketing text about it and then allow a consumer to actually, with one click of a button, to respond to the offer and essentially allow the marketer to connect and communicate with them. So I think cards ultimately is going to be a pretty fascinating thing to watch on the platform, both for marketing pieces and also for the content pieces.
So Adam, last topic. You're part of what I would call the second generation of management at Twitter. The first generation were the founders, this really small, tight group, some of them now famous, Jack Dorsey, Evan Williams, Biz Stone. There was a book written that had all sorts of, salacious details about their lives. You went public. It was very, big media event. And I'd like you to reflect as as the top sales executive, the pros and cons of all of this drama around an interesting company.
So there's a couple things I'd say to that. One is the process of going public was interesting because for most companies, that's the moment in the spotlight of the press. And that's really what you find out that you're made of. Turns out, Twitter had already been for years a public company, if you will, before that. So it really didn't faze us. I'm a huge basketball fan. We had the new NBA commissioner, Adam Silver, come in and talk about leadership and teamwork recently to the entire company. And he had this line about we asked him what made great teams in the NBA, and he said teamwork, or championships are won on the bus. They're not actually won on the floor. And so what's happening behind the scenes at the company is that the management team and the employee base is really view ourselves as being on the bus, while at the same time we're out on the floor performing as a public company. The last thing I'd say is, you know, it's interesting. I was there as employee 150 or so, so I saw the company go through this early birth stage, and then had been working before that at a huge company that had 50,000 employees, and you know, they actually ran it like a public company. So I'm actually now in a comfortable zone because we're used to this, the pace and the rhythm of running a company at scale like this. Although it was a heck of a lot of fun on the build phase, which I still came in at the early build phase. The number one thing that I learned was really around hiring. I hired 800 people or so.
80, you said?
800 people
800.
in 30 different countries in, you know, 3 years or so. And the number one thing that we learned was this: there are people that want to build successful companies, and there are people that want to work at a successful company. And all the hiring that we've done and continue to do today we're looking for builders, not for people that just want to work with inside of a successful business. And I think it's probably, you know, all things being equal, building is a heck of a lot more fun, a lot more rewarding, and it's still a phase of mind as people go out on their normal course of business.
Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Bain of Twitter. Thank you.